All yours, buddy. Patrick Simmsgeiger.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Pat from Diversified Waterscapes, and we are a lake maintenance firm based out of Southern California, and our company also manufactures specialty water treatment products for water conditioning. Basically, today what I'm going to be talking about are the total water maintenance, and this is something that I just try to encompass for, here today there's been a lot of very good scientific presentations and what have you, so this is a lot of things that have been discussed today we incorporate completely into our lake management services. And basically the objective here today is just a quick overview of understanding water quality, seasonal effects on bodies of water, best management practices, our 5-step program, and tools of the trade. You run into, natural lakes are what they are. They're typically self-contained, well-balanced systems until man intervenes. So once we start doing construction projects, working around, start dumping all of our pollutants in it, adding fish, feeding birds, adding all of the nutrients that are coming in, they quickly become non-natural. Many times in many situations people ask me what I do for a living, so we take care of lakes. What does that mean? You just have water in it, you've got some ducks out there, they should take care of themselves, everything should be fine. Once we intervene as man, of course, things change quite rapidly. Basically, the base things, a lot of detail has been spent today, which is great stuff, but I want to talk about eutrophication, which basically is nothing more than nutrient enrichment, which is mainly comprised of nitrogen and phosphorus. Of course, this affects the growth of algae, aquatic plants, and fisheries and the like. The 4 states of eutrophication, basically oligotrophic, small nutrients. We run into, these are some of the situations that we like in urban settings because they're brand new, very low in nutrients. What we find in many cases when a system is first installed, it's in this state. So, the customers that are taking care of it, they don't really have much to do until about 3 to 5 years when things start to load. We get into our next stage of our moderate supply of foods. These are situations that I like to deal with because now we've got some nutrients in there, we can get some nice plant material growing, and we can get some fish growing and what have you. As long as we're staying ahead of the game with our management program, we're pretty much in good shape. But as you see, this surrounding area here, this is on a golf course, we have homes around it, which they're fertilizing like crazy. All the grass clippings are going into the lakes. One of the first things people think is, well, we need fish in there, so let's throw some bass in there. Well, the bass aren't going to do anything when it comes to controlling some of the issues. Well, I know, let's throw some grass carp in here. So now everybody starts throwing their leaves and their grass clippings and everything else in the lake because we got grass carp, so let's feed the fish. Not realizing what's going to be happening down the road. So now you go a few years down the road of offering all of this great food source into a system. Now we're getting into a high supply of nutrient, well-nourished lake in our eutrophic situation. In the urban setting, or some of these areas, we deal with a lot of high-end residential communities as well, or some that are just kind of out on the outskirts where all this stuff's coming in. Now we're beginning to get odors, where things are really beginning to happen, getting a lot of pollutants in there, and situations where people are beginning to get concerned. Which then now takes us into the hyper-eutrophic situation. Now I know in some instances for you folks that grow fish, may like this situation. I'll get into because of the available nutrients and the coverage for the fish, and of course you're actually feeding nutrients into some of these lakes. In a situation like this, so most consumers, they look at this and say, wow, that water is really polluted, it's terrible, it's, you can get sick from it, my dog jumped in the water, he's sick. We had one instance where we came in and we treated with some algicide, and a couple of days later a kid had jumped in the water. He came home, bellyache and sick and everything else. And so next thing you know, we're thinking, okay, lawsuit. So we immediately grab water, start doing testing and everything else. Well, it really turned out that the kid was just faking it because he didn't want to get in trouble for jumping in the pond. And so, okay, great. Well, thank you very much. After we had gone out and spent several $100s and several sleepless nights over this whole issue. So, you know, many of these homeowners say, oh my God, that's horrible, that's pollutant. However, this particular property had a horrible midge fly problem. And we were throwing, you know, chemicals in there to knock out the midge fly, strike, but that gets expensive, and I don't really like doing that because that doesn't give us any long-term effect. So, you know, we kind of stopped treating this because we really wanted to go after the midge fly problem. We loaded up with bluegill, and shortly thereafter, within 6 months, we had no complaints. The following year, 2 years have now gone by, we've had 0 complaints, or have we found any midge flies. So, you know, we got a lot of birds and predators around this property, so we did let it go green, but at least we don't have the some of the other flying insect issues out there. Some of the other things I want to touch on the seasonal effects of water management. And again, one thing that we do is it's very important to really keep an eye on the seasons and try to be ahead of the game. Right now we're going into the fall. A lot of people in some areas, they're starting to put their feet up saying, okay, great, summer's over, our algae isn't blooming like crazy anymore, the aquatic plants, the weeds are dropping down, things are going good. Oh, it's pretty, beautiful fall colors. But what they don't do is they don't prevent this stuff from going into some of their waters. You get the landscapers that are the mow, blow, and goers that are blowing all the junk in the water, it sinks, water gets cold, begins to clear up, and people think, okay, it's time to relax because now it's going to get cold soon. We have nothing to do. You know, our lake's going to be fine for the next 6 to 8 months. However, this time of year, that's when we really want to step up or change our game plan. We know we're not going to be doing as much treatments out there, so that's when we just really want to bring in physical labor and come in and try to prevent as much of this stuff coming in that's going to create a problem for next year. And so we'll come in if we have any dredging jobs, or if folks are out there where they need to dredge, that's where you want to start planning for that, to start removing as much of those nutrients as possible. During winter months, again, this is where we run into situations where guys say, okay, good, man, my water's crystal clear, I don't see a plant down there, fish are swimming around, everything's nice and hunky-dory. We know differently because we're going to run into problems when it gets hot again. And so, again, what we do is we continue any of our sludge removal, getting as much trash out of the water as possible, and we continue also doing our microbial treatments. Because, again, even like what Kevin was talking about as far as reducing and going after that nutrient load and trying to digest the food source that's going to create the problem next season is key to success. Another thing that we also want to continue running our equipment, pumping systems, aeration systems during that period of time. We get, I've had customers come up and say, well, we really need to cut back on power consumption, so we're going to shut everything off. Well, as all of you professionals know, there's still things going on, and you may need, you know, to add on oxygen because your CO2, things might be decomposing, but yet that lake might continue to want to gas off. We did have, it's kind of nice being able to travel around the country and go to different environments and areas, because many folks will say, well, you know, we're up in the north, or we're down here in southern Florida, you're from California, things are different out here. You know, while you do have the different environmental changes in areas and geographical locations, things are a bit different. You know, they freeze in some areas of the country, but most of the problems that we deal with throughout the nation are pretty much the same. I've run into a situation in the Midwest where their lake froze over and they continued. I think it was that you was telling me the story once, Bob, that they had a lake that was frozen over, but they continued running their aerators and they end up getting a fish kill because of the CO2. There was no way for that lake to gas off. So in those situations, most people either shut it down or break the ice to let the lake continue to gas off. So again, keep it going, keep those microbial treatments going throughout the winter months. Springtime, again, cool water algae blooms may occur. Everything begins to grow. One of my barometers is when I'm looking at the hillsides and things are turning green, even though my lake may look crystal clear, nothing happening, things are happening. So that, as soon as it's greening up, that's my barometer. Okay, stuff's going to happen. Again, the most common mistake is people want to kick back, relax, and deal with other things that are happening. So again, I'm always paying special attention to the growth rates of the algae and other plant material that's beginning to happen. If we have any cold water or first season blooms, we may want to go out and treat those or physically remove them or take whatever methods work for that lake environment. Then summer comes, if you haven't really been trying or staying ahead of the game, all bets are off. If you've had problems the summer before, those problems are going to be right back on you in a heartbeat. I've gone to situations where I've seen a body of water, talked to the property owners, and you got a little bit of phthophyra growing around here, it's warming up, you might want to consider treating that. Now we're fine, it's just a little bit. You come back, and that's on a Friday afternoon, by Monday you come up back and that lake's half covered with phthophyra because this stuff's starting to reproduce exponentially. Now they got a problem. So now what do they have to do? Bring in more labor, they got to use more chemicals, they got to use more weaponry to go after that to try to get ahead of it. So everything we didn't do the season before, it's going to come right back upon us when the summer months come. So this brings me back to, basically, this is kind of our complete outline. This is what we do in the 5-step program consisting of aeration, filtration, physical maintenance, biological conditioning, and lastly, pest prevention, aka the use of chemicals. Aeration, there's been a lot of talk on that, so I won't get too deep into that. Basically, these are the benefits of aeration, unsightly algae, fish kills, reduction, odors, poor water quality, muck accumulation, and mosquito population buildup. So you've got a few different types of aeration systems: fountains, waterfalls, cascading streams, and air diffusion systems. Types of aeration, these are great. I get a lot of comments saying, well, yeah, my lake's fully aerated. Okay, and what do you have out there? Well, I got this floating fountain. Well, how big is your lake? Well, it's 5 acres. So you've got one fountain on 5 acres and expect it to aerate the entire lake. Well, obviously that's not going to happen. It might aerate that area within its local environment, but it's not going to take care of the entire lake. Air diffusion systems, those are my favorite because of the biggest bang for the buck. Easy to maintain, easy to install, and when done correctly, when laid out and installed correctly, you can get the maximum benefit for the lowest amount of power consumption and, of course, the ease of maintenance. Filtration, basically filtration is nothing more than separating solids from liquids. So by using filtration systems, we're trying to remove as many impurities or sediments from the system as possible. Several different types. Sand, cartridge, biofilters, and once-throughs. What I mean through once-through systems, typically those are, say, an irrigation system, where if we've got a good lake, we're pumping in good clean water, we're basically flushing it out all the time. So that's keeping a lot of the nutrients out of the lake system, so we're able to keep them cleaner longer. There's a sample of some of what I'm talking about in the sand filter systems. These are typically installed on kind of higher end water systems. You might see them in aquariums or complexes that have a focus on water. Say in water parks or some of your hotels, you go into their back rooms, they might have more elaborate filtration systems. Biofilters, this is just kind of a cutaway here on how a biofilter works. What we do on the left, normally we'll do this on a lake system if we have big 10 or 20 horsepower pumps. What we'll have is maybe an 8 or 10 inch line that lays on the bottom of the lake. And then on the left you'll see that this is that would be where your suction line is. And across where you see this whole area where it's suction line, we'd actually have pipes going across that are slotted. We bury those in a pea gravel mix, maybe a foot or two underneath. But what we're trying to create is just a slow, on a wide area, a plane of water to slowly filter through that biofilter, where in that field we actually build up a nice bacteria bed that then digests a lot of the nutrients that are in the water system. Then one thing that we'll actually do for maintenance is we will actually periodically go through and we'll treat the biofilter with enzymes and also bacteria to kind of reseed things and keep it going, keep it flowing up. Some cases, and what we found by doing that, by using our enzyme treatments, is the fact that most of your filters, what will happen is a lot of the sediment things will begin to plug it up and they'll start compacting. Where what happens when that begins to compact, you lose your area of filtration. So by utilizing the bacteria field and also the enzymes that are in there, we're actually breaking down a lot of that material.
Do you have any idea or size estimates, volume of water, size of the pond or lake you can put that in?
You know, that's actually a good question, and what we've found, and I have not seen any type of scientific research or as far as the engineering, but basically what I found is about a third of the area of the lake. So if you've got like a 1 acre lake, if you have an area maybe about a third of that area would be the size of a biofilter.
Wow.
Now,
See, I use those, but I don't know how they work. I don't know if they really work. It's very hard to, I mean, you can show nitrogen levels dropping, phosphorus levels, if you make it big enough. So what you're ending up is a little pre-treatment settling basin.
right, and mostly what I've seen that where they were installed where they did not work, or where you had a tiny, you know, biofilter. We've got like a 3 acre lake and they put in maybe 1,000 square foot biofilter. Just not large enough.
1,000 foot is 10 by
1,000 square feet.
Yeah, 10 by 100.
Yeah, but they you know, they had this huge lake out on a golf course. It wasn't large enough, and it filled up too quickly. So that's the only problem. The upside of that is they're relatively cheap to install because you've got your piping and then you're using pea gravel.
But there are maintenance problems too. I mean, that container right there, what did it cost you to put in?
Oh, that's just kind of a sample. Because
okay, example. Okay.
Yeah, because what we do is we'll make them large.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to. It's too hard. It was too hard for me to capture a good photo of a large system.
Well, sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay. But that's one of the only drawbacks of filtration. Whether it's sand filters or what have you, they can be a lot of work. So it's a selective use tool, but it is one of the tools that we will use in
What do you use for your media?
Pardon?
Your media?
We'll use like a 3/8 pea gravel. The reason why I like that, you can use like 3/4 inch rock, but if you have to go to replace it, that's a real pain in the neck because you can't shovel this stuff out. And the larger the media, or that 3/8, I don't like to go smaller because then you have kind of a compacting issue as well. So
It looks like bark or something on the top of it.
yeah, like I said, I just do this in a pit. That's just this is not a real one. This is a model.
Okay.
So how do you keep it from biofalling or channelizing? Do you have to do maintenance to it?
We do, some of the maintenance, like I said, we'd use bacteria and enzymes to get that horizontal plane to break up a lot of that. But then in some cases, we have to go in with rakes and kind of rake it and disturb it a little bit and kind of churn it up. Over a period of time, it's going to have to be, that media is going to have to be removed. That means draining the system. So if you're ever in a situation where you're going to set something like that, always think ahead. Okay, this is going to last 10 years. I mean, the big biofilters, I get many, many years. I have some that are 15 years old that are still working. But they're going to have to get dredged out eventually. And that means dropping the water level, going and physically removing that stuff.
But you could go in and Clorox them too.
Yeah, but the problem if you start getting dirt and sediment in there, that begins to compact, because usually after some of these systems too, because of previously what I've shown, you know, people letting stuff get into your lake and now your mud begins to accumulate, you're going to have to start removing some of that.
Like, these are ideal like for the Baltimore Aquarium.
They
You
are,
can back flush them, you can clean them, you can go into Clorox them. I mean, they work really good in big marine aquariums. Wonderful, they do.
they do, and we'll use them in, say if you have a golf course or a clubhouse setting where you have a nice feature around it, and people have their koi ponds, and you know you want to do all of that feeding and what have you. That's where they work really nice. On a large lake system, then that's not recommended. So you know that's just part of one of the tools if we can do aeration, filtration.
Oops.
When this happened. Did I hit something there, Bob?
I probably did. How far did you go?
I can pick it up right here. Okay, so again, yeah, that's just part of one of the tools that we want to think about if we're doing an installation or maybe a restoration on a system. Next thing is physical maintenance, manual labor. That's just getting in there with rakes, your weed rakers, your cutters, big nets, and whatnot, and you know just physically removing as much material as possible. When Matt Rail was in his presentation talking about the amount of pounds of phosphorus that a bucket of leaves will create every year, if you think about it on this system, if you're out there every day or 3 days a week pulling out 5 buckets full of leaves, how much does that accumulate to in 1 year? It's amazing when you start doing the math on that, how much reduction in your plant material you're going to pull out. Or do manual labor, or obviously larger systems will go in and we'll do some of the mechanical harvesting. One of the big mistakes that I've seen folks do is we've got a couple parks in the neighborhood, and every year they spend thousands of dollars to harvest it out because they want to be 100% natural, but they won't go back and do any other kind of treatments. Well, you have these plants that are going to fragment, or you have certain algae species, they're just breaking it up and they leave big patches around. It's the middle of the summer, the lake was covered with, say, Pithophora, they clean it out, and you go back a month later and it's 100% covered again. Whereas a guy could have came in, probably used about $100 worth of algicide and gone and knocked it out and prevented that. So, in the mechanical harvesting, we deal with some guys that we'll go back behind them in some applications and just do spot treatments after they've done the big harvesting. Biological conditioning, this basically, we're talking about biological conditioning that's using plants and fish and other biological products. Getting into our lake systems, we like to use indigenous species for obvious reasons. And if we're going to replace any types of plant material, we want to use something that's going to be easy to control and easy to take out. Care is one of my favorites just because of the characteristics of how it will help clear the water, good spawning grounds, and it's easy to control and easy to maintain. Invertebrates and fish, that gets into your whole fishery situation where when we come in and, like when I was referring to that midge fly program that we had, basically we'll use our forage fish to get a good base establishment. Most people, especially in California and different areas around the states that I've seen, they said, well, we want fish. We have this, we just put in this lake, I want lots of fish loaded up with bass. Well, what are they going to eat unless you're giving them supplemental food? So we want to establish our forage base first, and we want to come in with our predators. So getting those arrangements and those balances are critical. Getting in with your aquatic plants, again, we'll use floating islands. Bob's got a great one at his house. Those are kind of fun just for nutrient uptake. and you know, your different species of fish and invertebrates. That gets us to the last thing on our list, which is pest prevention. And yeah, that's pretty much determining the pest, okay? These may not be pests to some of you, but some of us are big pests. So by determining the pest, what we're going to do is determine the pest control method. Are we going to physically remove them? Or are we going to use chemical pest controls, or are we going to use fish, or what have you? So again, with the midge fly, we like, I like my bluegills and sunfish. Koi are great, also going after some of the larvae, and then mosquito fish for mosquitoes. Weeds and algae, again, we're either coming in with chemicals and using biologicals. We'll use, like with our algicide, we'll mix our enzyme. Our algicide is chelated copper. We actually can mix our enzyme with it, so we go in, we start to kill the plant, start damaging it, and then that continues the breakdown process. And then again, of course, on the right, there's your physical removal. So in your aquatic weeds or algae, we want to select the right product to treat it, or the right cocktail. Tools of the trade, when I'm talking, these are just some examples. There's several more out there on the market. So, in many of these things, you can do certain cocktail combinations. A lot of professional applicators out there have their own little special ingredients. We'll get into some resistant species. We'll get into hard water situations. Everything's, different environments are very much different. So sometimes we'll make up our cocktails, sometimes they won't work. And when that happens, we'll just mix everything up and just nuke the heck out of the lake. And that sometimes works. But be careful out there and be safe. And always follow label instructions. So, basically water chemistry all throughout is very different. It's very complex. These are some of the products that we make that are specialty water treatment. We do have a booth downstairs, so we can talk about that a little bit later. But it's really, it's our environment that we're working in, and one lake we can treat here. You could have two identical bodies of water. This one's perfect all the time. They're like children. You got the great child over here, and then the other one that is the black sheep that gives us nothing but trouble. And I know nobody in this room was ever a black sheep. Right? You guys, your parents just all love the heck out of it. So this is just a situation where we had a community where they've got a 8-acre lake down in the bottom with this water. It's pumped from one side up to the top, and it kind of flows around through office community, condominiums, business park, and what have you. And when this fountain comes up, everything's pushed, and it always got just really nasty in this corner over here. So we came in, actually got called in because they had a huge fish kill out there, and they were lucky enough to get on TV. And yeah, about 3 different, all the stations, about 3 different episodes that night. So they decided they wanted to spend a little bit of money to get this lake cleaned up. This was one of the issues. The foaming didn't cause the fish. There were other factors, but it's just the way the design of this was. So we came in, put some F20 in that, or some F10, and that knocked it out instantaneously. But it was a chronic situation, so in that situation, we came up and set them up on a chemical injection system. So basically silicone-based defoamer, and just slowly dripped it in so we could keep that chronic situation out. So in some of the water systems out there, we may also look at our applications and flow rates and decide whether or not we're going to do a slow injection of, say, bacteria, enzymes, or algicide, or what have you. This is another area, situation where we had Spirogyra on the bottom and the Pithophora topping out right on top of it, very difficult to control. So we did an application using the F30, and that was about 2 weeks later. This lake actually pumps directly onto a vegetable crop, so the owner was very concerned about us using product, but we went out and pretty much hit it. I left that in the top up there so you can see the comparison, the fact that this was only about 2 weeks later during the same time of the year. This is another situation where we come in and we have a product called the F20 EnviroClear, which is a polymer-based product that actually drops suspended solids and clears up the water. We've got a lake at the bottom that's actually a waterfall. I'm standing at the top where I put it in, put the F30 in, or the cocktail. What we did first is we treated this. We wanted to spike the algae with some algicide and get a kill beginning to happen. Then we came out and dropped everything out. The superintendent was panicked because this was on a Monday and his tournament was on Friday. So he was pretty freaked out. We went out there and we got to this point by Wednesday. So we came in, we did our drip application, we spiked the algae with the F30 and then we dropped it out and we colored it to taste. So again, you know, these are those situations. I know this is kind of a shocker to a system. If you have fish, I would take a totally different approach. Golf course, they don't care. They're playing golf. They need to have this water clear. So one of the last thing that I always say too that we run into, you know, you guys out there, you're the experts. I run into so many situations where you know, we need to communicate with our customers, try to educate them as much as we possibly can, and just be proactive. In many situations, what I run into out there, most people are reactive. They wait until it's too late and then there's a problem. Granted, we make a lot of extra money that way, but that's really not the proper way to manage your water systems. You know, good proactive and, you know, care, getting ahead of the game can, you know, keep things nice and you can enjoy your water systems year round. So, do I have any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, Patrick. Thank you very much.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's wrap it up. I didn't do a PowerPoint, you know, and kind of designed this where we have some interactive time, and by golly, we didn't. So feel free to catch up with each one of these speakers to get the specific questions answered that you want. I do want to take a few minutes and talk specifically to those of us that are in business. You know, I find myself continually thinking about how can I refine myself or fine-tune myself, or not, maybe not reinvent. I don't think that's a good word, but I think we've got to be poised for change all the time. So what I wanted to do with this session is just take a minute and just hear from you guys. I'll tell you a few things I do, and I want to try to provoke a little conversation, and let's talk about some things that you can do to help improve your business, you know, improve your thinking. I think this kind of exchange is great. I think that helps us a lot. One of the things as a fisheries biologist, this is my 33rd year as a private fisheries consultant. I travel the nation designing lakes, building really cool fish. As a matter of fact, Randy Parrish back here on the back row, he and I are working together with a landowner. He's the ranch manager, and we're designing a very, very cool lake. You saw it in its early stages. You know, and one of the fun things we're doing there is we've tried to take that lake and turn it into a game, a 9-hole fish course. So we're designing 9 different zones in that lake that'll have different habitat for certain species of fish. And we're having a blast, and that landowner loves it. He's already writing rules, getting, you know, cards, and creating a little notebook. He's already got the game kind of figured out. All I got to do is make sure the walleye stay in the walleye hole and the black bass stay in the black bass hole. No big deal, you know. So I wanted some of the things that I do to help our business is one of the things that struck me 6 or 8 years ago. It's not about the fish. Even though I'm a fisheries biologist and I publish Pond Boss and write about all this stuff, it's not about fish. It's about that landowner. So one of the things I try to do is to get into his head and figure out who he is, what he wants, and use my skills to help him get where he wants. Well, part of those skills means I need to know Patrick. I need to know Bob. You know, I need to be able to talk to Josette. You know, and Chris. I mean, how many times do we talk? You know, so. Part of that is to build a really big network and provide more than what you know. You know, like with your business, Steve, you need more landowners that can bring in good waters so you can go get more anglers to come fish those waters. So you'll have cash flow in both directions. You know, and you figured out some of the value-added things. You can sell them some fish. You bought a shocker boat. You go shock their lakes. So, you know, diversifying what you can offer, and one of the problems with that, Greg, is how much time do you have to go do this stuff? You know, so you've got to select what you can do. Same thing with Jeff and Sean, you know, and the other, you know, private guys in the business. So what let's do is let's take a few minutes and think about some of the things that you can do to diversify your marketability, and then how do you cross-market? I'm going to throw it out there. One way I cross-market is I write. And that's just kind of happened. I didn't expect to cross-market. I mean, I get phone calls from people that read a story that I wrote in 1996 that ended up on bassresource.com. You know, and all of a sudden here's somebody calling me from, you know, North Carolina wanting to talk about a lake. You know, so then I get to choose. Do I want to help them work on that lake, or do I go find Wade Bells and his buddies and refer to them, or do I call who's our buddy in Raleigh? Somebody help me out.
John Gardner.
They live in Gardner. You know what I'm talking about. I'll think about it. I'll think of his name in a minute. He was here last time.
Johnny Foster.
Johnny Foster. Johnny Foster, that's right. Or do I refer him to Johnny Foster? You know, so you know, I think having a big network, Jeff, you know, as you're growing in your business, what are some of the things that you do, not necessarily just to cross market, but to be sure that that client gets what that client wants? You got a network of fish suppliers. You got a network of stuff, you know.
Yeah, you have to have relationships with all your vendors so you know you get what you want when you need it, and you know, lines of communication are open. You need to know who you can trust, who's going to come through, and who isn't.
That's it. Now I found there'll be a booth upstairs during the show. I came across a company, almost by default, that does real subtle landscape lighting. Well, I've got one guy whose lake I manage that as I was looking across, I had seen some lighting in this one person's place. So I asked him, where'd you get that lighting? He gave me the name of the company, and shoot, I called him. And now, you know, I can also refer landscape lighting as a fisheries biologist. So the challenge I'm going to throw out there is let's be kind of creative with some of the things that we can offer that makes our benefit greater. You know, I know the guy that sells the road boss. You know? So if you're working on a ranch that's got 25 miles of gravel road, they got to have a road boss. You know, it might not make much money off of that, can we? You know, but we can sure talk about it, you know? So, what do you do?
The challenge, obviously, if you spread out and you're so diverse in everything, you can't be an expert in all of that. So you got to have the person that is an expert in it, but how do you know, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I want it to be more diverse. I mean, Sean stuck his neck on the line with electric fishing, and, you know, I'm so happy for him because he's got that market, and it's the best thing out there, and it's awesome. But that was a challenge he took, and I don't know how that balancing that part.
That's why I depend on a Sue Cruz and a Matt Rail, you know, and a Bob Robinson. I depend on them. You know, they're the experts. Now, how can they come in and help us profit? How can we help them profit and get the landowner a fair shake, a fair deal with something that actually benefits that landowner? Right?
You maintained your niche. See, that I think part of it is education, and part of it is you have a special niche, just like Sean did, and you spread it out to pull in more partners.
I think partners is a good word. I think that's a real good word. You know, I've been working with Kevin, trying to crack the nut on some things, you know, with how can we use some of these microbial products and enzymes to make it better. You know, visited with Ryan at length about fish foods and things. You know, Bill Cody, we'll send him a sample on occasion, you know, probably more than he wants.
In medicine, we call it playing in the sandbox together. You share resources, and you develop a group relationship. In a small town medical community, no one can know everything about one item. And you play in the sandbox with your cohorts and colleagues. People trust that. They like that. They like the fact that they know that you refer them to somebody who's better at X, and Greg's great at Y, and Sean's great at Z, and they like that.
And you bring them together. You know, one of the goals of Pond Boss is to take this kind of cottage industry that's developing into more of a full-fledged industry and trying to unify it. You know, we have our resource guide. If you're not listed in there, you need to be, you know, because that's a go-to source for consumers, or for the readers. You know, so what ways do you market? How do you get yourself in front of people so you can go be good at what you do? How do you do that?
Well, a lot of what we do is you know, some of the speaking engagements, writing and whatnot, but also one thing that has helped us is, you know, being focused on what is important to you, what it is that you do, what is your profession. However, having that network of people out there, because we get calls all the time too. It's like, well, I don't know, you know, I mean, I'm not going to tell them I don't know. However, I have so-and-so you can call. Here's a number, and I'll refer that, you know, that person to them. So as far as, yes, building up that resource, I know sometimes it's real tempting to want to jump into it, because I'm looking at this fish shocking, that looks cool. I'd love to get into that, but I have to pull myself back, because that's not what we do. You know, our focus is different.
It's not your core business.
It's not our core business. However, getting that network, you get us all the time, can you fish shock? I'm actually looking for somebody in Southern California that can do some shocking for me, that I would sub out or just send the work off, so that works for us.
John?
In our business, we're primarily driven by the organic industry in California. Yeah, what I see, and what I tell some of our workers is that they say, well, how do you figure this out? And a lot of times it's, I got to tell them, we make it up as we go. Only because we don't have any quick fixes in the organic arena. So by working with Kevin, we kind of reverse engineer our problems, or we come up with other solutions, whether it's mechanical harvesting. But even at mechanical harvesting, you have to look at the cost of doing business and the time it takes to do it. So we try to use a lot of different facets of mechanical harvesting, whether we're using booms, mechanical harvesters, or actually just ground pound labor. But I see in an industry like this, is my first time here, what I see is a real strong suit for this is bringing credibility to an industry. By the people of an industry merging together and sharing their insights and their different ideas, because what it will do is it will project the industry with more credibility to the consumer ultimately. And then when you have a network of people like this, we can all get together, share ideas, and find better ways to do things. So we're not each individually reinventing the wheel.
I love that. I love that. Well, oh, come on.
Yeah, I have just 2 comments to follow up on what you just said. For me, it's humbling coming to a meeting like this, because I already know that I don't know everything, but this reinforces that. And it's a good thing, because it reminds me of the things that I don't know about, and 2, it exposes me to people who I can call. Thank you. And the other thing is that I'm in a unique position now, because what we're trying to do in terms of this consulting part of you know, lake restoration is that I'm in a position to go to a lake, look at all of these different issues, realize that it might need, you know, a certain sort of alum treatment or a chemical treatment or aeration or whatever else. And we may not necessarily provide all those things, which means I can call someone else and recommend someone else. So I almost feel like in this position I'm now almost in the center of all of this, and I can reach out to all these different people to do what needs to be done. And it works out for me, because I still get to do what I do. It works out for everyone else because I get to pull other people in. And it works for the customer because they get the best service, because I'm not trying to do something that I'm not capable of doing. I'm allowing someone else to do what
You know, with that in mind, I'll instruct the girls that if any of you that are here would like a roster of who is here, we'll make that available. Okay? And that way you can have a list of who's who and what they do. And you know, I mean, we're going to be here a couple of days. You guys exchange cards, go by everybody's booth. You know, a lot of you in here have a booth. So you guys circle back and use this time to help build that network. And John, I really like what you're saying. And I'll tell you this, you know, I kind of laid the seed out there. If you want to write, I know the guy that edits Pond Boss magazine, and I'm always, I mean, he's always looking for, you know, good consumer-based, end-user, written at 6th grade level stories. 1,500 words, send me 5 or 6 pictures, talk to me about it first, you know. But I'm more than happy to help you do what you do through your knowledge to convey back to the Pond Boss readers, which helps bring that, you know, that network together. Maybe not so much as much on a professional level, although if all of you don't have a subscription to Pond Boss magazine, you need to talk to me, you know. But as well as with the readers of the magazine, who are the consumers. So that's your invitation. And let me tell you something. I don't care if you don't know how to write. That matters not to me. You know, Mark Cornwell, Professor SUNY Cobleskill, I could not get him to write for 2 years because he said, man, I'm not a very good writer. I don't care. You know, tell the story. You have a story to tell? Let's tell the story. I didn't get to be a writer till I wrote a lot, you know, and if I can't fix it, I've got people that can. So I don't hear any excuses. You've got stories to tell, let's tell the stories. So I'll hand up.
Yeah, I'm new to the industry, but I have a pretty extensive sales background, and it never ceases to amaze me. You started this conversation out, is your customer is a landowner, and you're very good about asking questions. And I think that's one of your keys to success. You know, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And it never ceases to amaze me. In sales, I call it feature puking. So I will go to your booth, I'll go to the Texas Hunter booth, and not pick it on you or anybody, the Vertex booth, and I'll say, tell me about the aeration system. The first thing you do is you start feature puking about the product, as opposed to asking a series of questions that's going to help you really answer my question. Mm-hmm. So I encourage all of you guys to ask good questions and not feature puke. So
that's a new scientific term.
Yeah. Car dealerships are perfect for it. Have you ever walked in and said, I'm looking for a new car? First thing they do is start telling you about I don't care about the horsepower and the, you know, I just want to, ask me some questions about really what I'm looking for. So.
That's good. That's good. Kevin, I think you were next up.
I wanted to say we all got to help Bob, you know, get more people here, because I go to a lot of technical conferences and I sit there for 40 minutes and hear how they set up the test and how they set up the experiment, and then they say for 10 minutes what happened. And I sit through a whole day, but this stuff in the morning is really good, and we got to work on bringing more people here because this is really good. In a half a day, if I went to some of these other big technical conferences, it would have taken me a whole week to learn that of sitting through meetings.
There's one other thing here. Guys, I've been in this business about 40 years. When I graduated in 1972, there weren't any jobs for a PhD in a pond. Those were cattle tanks. I had to go off in oceanography to earn a living, okay? This guy right here has created what we're enjoying right now. I didn't run across Bob and Pond Boss till about 3 years ago. I said, my God, that's exactly what we need. We need a vehicle. We need somebody who brings everything together. There was no business here. There'd be a few places that wanted a pond. No money. I mean, can you live on $2,000, $3,000 a year earned over 3 or 4 months? No. You know, what Bob has really done here is just unbelievable to me. He created a whole business. I mean, he's made a business for himself, but he made a business for us. I personally thank him for that.
Wow.
Because I'm enjoying being back in ponds after being away from them for 30 years. And wow. A pond is something I can manage. The ocean, no way. No, I've worked in both poles. I've worked in 7 oceans. But a pond, I can do something. And allowing me to do something and track customers, I give them my Pond Boss articles and I get a job. I mean, his reprints are more valuable to me than anything I got. And I published a lot of papers. You know, finding new work in the area that's what I call a virgin field, and that's what it is. It's an emerging field.
It is emerging.
It would not have occurred without Pond Boss.
Wow.
Now, the further you go away from the states, Texas, they sort of tell you, well, that's a Texas thing, you know. And I see them creeping north, New England, New York. That's fantastic. California, it's, yeah, people from Australia. So the problem here is communication, education.
Mike, I know you're right, and I think that if I think about the people that are in this room, the aeration people, the fish feed people, and the fish feeder people would not have the business they do today.
Exactly, right there, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, can I have a raise, fellas?
No,
Thank you,
there are very few people
that's very
that
humbling.
create a movement. And I really, I knew Swindle, and you know, and I could go work in catfish at Auburn. That was all there was to do. And my master's thesis was on Anderson bait minnows from Arkansas. I could go work there. There was no jobs, really. So I worked in Aquaria for a bunch of years. I helped build a Baltimore aquarium because they were popular. People want them. Now they want lakes just like that.
You know, tomorrow, I'm going to put in front of you a guy who I keep shaking my head at what's happened to this guy. And most of you have heard about this. Have you heard about the guy in Oregon that got arrested for not draining his pond? Have you heard about that yet? He served 30 days in the county jail because he refused to drain his pond. Well, he's going to be here and tell his story. He lives outside of Medford, Oregon. They're arraigning him for a probation violation. He paid his $1,500 fine, served his 30 days in jail, but another condition of his probation was to drain that half-acre pond beside his house that he uses for fire protection.
Half-acre.
Half-acre pond. He won't drain the pond. So he got arraigned again yesterday, but he will be here to tell his story. We can't let that kind of stuff happen. That's absolutely insane. That's nuts. Mark, you've had your hand up 3 or 4 times.
I'm not a professional person. I'm a physician, and I do this for fun. So I'm one of the people who be buying stuff from you guys. And as a consumer, I got a sample. A game fish gave me a sample of a fertilizer bucket. You fill out the little thing, and on it had pondboss.com. So I went to that, subscribed, became a member, and went to the forum. And that's where I got to meet a lot of and I was on all the time because, like I said, I didn't have kids at that time. And Greg and Sean, I remember him sending me pictures of ultrasound of his little peanut baby that was about to be born. And Greg, you know, hey man, I'm gonna be up in your area near you. Maybe we can hook up. And then Bruce Condella, is he here? I don't know.
He will be.
You know, I had a child, so I hadn't logged on for a while. And he emailed me and said, hey man, where you been? You know, and so those who haven't subscribed, I hope you will, because it does become almost like a family and a big, you kind of get to know everybody. And as a consumer, when I hear Greg and Sean and all those people talk about that kind of stuff, that's what brings, you say, how do you get people coming back to your name? That's what I remember. I remember Greg's name and Sean's name and Bruce's name because they reached out to me and said, hey man, where you been? Where you been on the website? So I think being on the website and being a member of the Pond Boss and getting the subscription, I think is very important because that's how you get your name out there. And I remember Greg Ryan's name and Bruce and Sean's just like it's in the back of my head and Cody. Was there a Cody something?
Yeah, he's around here somewhere. It all depends on what time.
Those, I remember reading on those all the time, and so as a person, when I go look at something to buy, I look at what Greg's saying, and I look at what Sean's saying, and I look at what those guys are saying, and that's what I rely on as a consumer. So I hope that helps from a consumer standpoint, because I'm not here to sell anything. I'm here because I'm a nerd, and I like pond management. Everybody's making fun of me. They're like, why are you going to the pond management conference? You know, I'm like, well, I just want to go, you know, debrief my mind after some boards last week, and they're like, a pond management conference? I'm like, yeah, it's fun. You know,
you're going to change sandboxes.
Yeah, it's a stress relief for me. So as a consumer, I think when you guys are on the forum, when you reach out to the people who are, you know, beginners like me, it really makes me remember your name and makes me want to use your services. And so when I have somebody in your area that calls me and says, hey, I saw the picture of your pond, it looks good. And wish mine would look like that. Well, where are you? And then I can mention those names. Greg, he's down in your area, and et cetera, et cetera. So I really appreciate Greg and Sean and those guys reaching out and just saying, hey, where you been? Bruce, where you been?
That's good. That's good. Ken, you had your hand up.
Well, I think that all three of these guys really hit on it. I think what John started with, the credibility thing. Now, being on Pond Boss and a few other sites that I'm involved with, I get a lot of either emails or private messages. You know, every day as a moderator, I get, yesterday it was, who can I find for a lawyer to do a land settlement in Northern Virginia? And I am constantly asked, you know, who can dig out this pond for me? And the thing I can provide through PMs, particularly on pond bottom, is the credibility of the people within, I'd say certainly Northern Virginia and Northern West Virginia. And it's all because of just what you're talking about, because these guys, you know, we've all run across these issues, and we're able to toss these things up, and we can put up credible sources. And right now I'm fighting with a fish dealer, not really fighting with him, I give up on him, but he doesn't put out pure fish. Now, the website has done a lot through it. Now, none of us will put the name up. Well, the name has gotten out, but, you know, my red-eared sunfish didn't have red ears. My channel cats, the white catfish.
Didn't have channels.
Another one of our neighbors got brown bullheads when he got catfish there. So, you know, and those things, so now people in the area are very aware of that particular deal. And when they come to me and say, where do I get fish? I've got 3 good suppliers that I can recommend, but I've got some that say, you know, don't go there.
Do be careful what you put as far as any kind of thing that could potentially be defaming.
Oh, absolutely.
On the website.
Right, exactly.
You can be held
Oh,
for
absolutely.
defamation comments online.
All right, anybody else want to add to this? If you're in the fishing tournament and you don't have a license yet, you better scoot to the marina and get a fishing license. Because they're going to push off in 50 minutes, shotgun start. I want to thank everybody for attending and thank the speakers that presented today, and we'll see you guys as we go.
Fishing tournament at 1?
4:30. Fishing tournament at 1 o'clock. It's kind of fun to go watch them take off if you haven't done that. You just drive there? Yeah, you can take the shuttle down there. The marina's down at the bottom of the hill. You know, so if you've not been to a fishing tournament, it's pretty fun. Yeah, you know what? They got back later. Yeah, they got stuff like that. One's playing at 4:30. And 6:30 has all the pairings. Who's picking up fish? You're going to push off at 1. So you need to be there probably 12:45. If you don't have a license, you need to get a license. Okay, at the marina. You're going out there. Yeah, no, I'm not going to get there. I'm going to go down. See everybody else. He was upstairs. Yeah.
Basically like veterans will have a bike sit.
Okay, yeah.